January 22nd, 2008, the day Heath Ledger died. The masseuse was outside knocking on the door of Heath's house in New York. They had an appointment, but no one was answering. She rang the bell and knocked, but no one answered. Confused, since Heath always notified when he cancelled an appointment, she contacted the housekeeper, Mrs. Teresa Solomon. They call again, and in the face of silence, they decide to enter the house. The first steps were cautious, but the timid calls turned into tears. When they found Heath Ledger naked, unconscious in his bed, in an unusual position, on his bedside table there was a jar with pills scattered around. Both women called 911 and a friend of Heath, the actress Mary-Kate Olsen. Teresa stayed on the phone with professionals who guided her until she could establish that Heath was not breathing. The masseuse tried to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but she couldn't bring him back to life. The ambulance arrived minutes later, but the omnivores that allowed him to live the last time were the same ones that took his breath away, that put him to sleep forever. Heath Ledger, known worldwide for his interpretation of the Joker and his role in Brokeback Mountain, lost his life on January 22, 2008 at the age of 28. While there were rumors of suicide, it was confirmed that the cause of his death was an overdose of sleeping pills. The different situations he had to go through, added to the fame, were weighing too heavily on him, and he needed to slowly silence those demons. That January night ended up killing them. There are those who say that the Joker's curse claimed a life, and it's not surprising because it already inhabited the minds of those who portrayed it. But in this case, it took the life of a young man who was a Hollywood star in every sense of the word. Today we are going to learn about the short but intense career of a young actor who made few films, but nevertheless remained in everyone's mind for his wonderful performances on the big screen. Now let's get started. Heath Ledger was born on April 4, 1979 in Australia, in the city of Perth. His older sister Kate awaited his birth along with their parents, Sally Ledger Bell, a French language teacher, and Kim, his father, a renowned engineer. The Ledger family was well known in the city because since his great-grandfather, Sir Frank Ledger, they ran a foundry that generated much of the raw material for the famous Perth pipeline. He completed his primary studies at Mary's Mount Primary School and then attended Guildford Grammar School. There, at just 10 years old, he experimented with acting by playing Peter Pan in a school play. At the same age, he was considered a great chess player by winning the Western Australia Children's Championship. Around the age of 12, he went through his parents' separation. It was at that time when his older sister Kate, who was already an actress, encouraged him to pursue acting. Heath admired Gene Kelly, a very well-known American actor, singer, and dancer in his prime in the 50s. That was the inspiration that led him to participate in a school contest, and it would be a path he would never abandon again. At 16, he left school to fully dedicate himself to acting. In 1992, his best friend since childhood, Trevor DiCarlo, accompanied him to Sydney so he could participate in a role in Cloning Around. He then continued starring in different series like Sweet in 1996, where he had to play a homosexual cyclist. In parallel, from 1993 to 97, he played roles in very well-known and successful series in Australia, until finally in 97 he made his film debut in Black Rock, a drama that had 5 nominations for the Australian Film Institute Award, among other awards. His performances were of the most varied Australian comedy series, dramatic and comedy films like 10 Things I Hate About You and Police series. Heath managed to get under the skin of the character and was overwhelmingly successful in the environment. By the year 2000, Heath Ledger would gain a more public image from appearances in films like The Patriot with Mel Gibson and his performance in Monsters Ball. Undoubtedly, Heath Ledger's leap to fame was linked to his performance in Brokeback Mountain, where he played Ennis Del Mar, a cowboy who has a homosexual relationship with Jack Twist, portrayed by Jake Gyllenhaal. This role resulted in his nomination for the Golden Globe Awards for Best Dramatic Actor, and he was nominated for nothing less than an Oscar for this performance. At just 26 years old, he was recognized by critics as a professional who managed to get under the skin of the character, comparing him to greats like Marlon Brando and Sean Penn. The viewer could read the true feeling in his performance. He really knew how to carry within him the details of the character and share them as his own. This young actor was finally consecrated, but the success was just beginning. It was at that time that he met Michelle Williams in 2004 while filming the movie that had put him on top. Later they would have a baby girl, Matilda, who would be born the same month the film was released. After the success of Brokeback Mountain in 2006 alongside Abby Cornish, Heath starred in an adaptation of Candy, and thanks to this film, Ledger was invited to join the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. The praises kept coming, and with them, the recognitions and awards. Heath was at the top, he had it all. However, life still had much more to offer him. The question was whether he was willing to endure it. He enjoyed acting and directing, and later indulged in making audiovisual productions. In his aspiration to be a film director, he made several music videos. Hip-hop songs like Cause and Effect from NFA's First 400 were very well received in the industry. In 2007, he founded a record company called Masses Music and directed the music video for Ben Harper's song called Morning Journey. He also worked on an adaptation of the novel The Queen's Gambit alongside Alan Scott. Yes, he was going to be in charge of directing the adaptation of The Queen's Gambit. While acting moved him, and he loved it very much, there was something that was beginning to weigh on him. Fame. He couldn't stand being a product being used by someone else. Going back a few years, in 2001, Sony executives showed him at a meeting the promotional campaign for A Knight's Tale, where he was seen in a poster in the foreground. The moment he saw himself reflected in that image, he ran to the bathroom. He was having a panic attack and couldn't calm down, not even with inconsolable crying. The problem was that while he had always sought fame and to establish himself as an actor, once he got there, he couldn't stand it. From that moment on, Heath always presented himself as a hard-to-reach actor. He was not a fan of giving many interviews and he behaved strangely on set. But with the success of Brokeback Mountain, he would have no other choice. He would have to become a Hollywood star whether he liked it or not. During filming, the future mother of his daughter, Michelle Williams, twisted her ankle. He accompanied her to the hospital and they fell in love at first sight. Once they became official, they moved to Brooklyn, where Heath appreciated the tranquility with which he had managed to lead his daily life, even commenting on his gratitude for being able to go to the supermarket without anyone bothering him. Although he had been nominated for an Oscar for his role in Brokeback Mountain, he didn't win it, and that made him feel relieved. Something that always attracted a lot of attention was that director Christopher Nolan wanted to give him the role of Bruce Wayne in Batman. The actor turned it down but got back in touch with him when he found out he was looking for someone to play the Joker. The filmmaker, obviously, did not hesitate to give him the role, although we will always be left with a doubt. How Heath Ledger would have portrayed Batman. In 2008, he began his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight. That performance, far from taking away the public's attention, elevated him again as an artist to an inconceivable level. He was inspired by Alex DeLarge from A Clockwork Orange and Sid Vicious, the leader of the Sex Pistols. Don't you know who Sid Vicious is? Well, I invite you to watch the video that is uploaded on this channel called The Day Sid Vicious Died. Heath locked himself in a room for 6 weeks in order to delve into the character, study it, and try out different voices. In addition, his love for directing led him to shoot some action scenes that left Nolan speechless. The actor had his own ideas about the character, from his interpretation of madness to his clown makeup. It is said that Heath went to a pharmacy, bought the cheapest makeup kit, and with that painted his face. In this way, he established and defined what the makeup of this character would be. Then the makeup staff just had to repeat his work. Regarding the smile and the scars that extended to the sides of the mouth, they were linked to the gangs of Glasgow in Scotland. Among enemy groups in the city, they would cut each other with broken bottles or knives to project a smile, or as they say, from ear to their rivals. The actor commented that he had separated from his wife Williams and told the New York Times, "Last week I slept an average of 2 hours a night. I couldn't stop thinking. My body was exhausted and my mind kept going." For that, he took an Ambien pill, recommended for insomnia, but he couldn't fall asleep. He took another one and was able to rest, but an hour later he woke up and his mind still wouldn't stop, so he got up and walked around his house, moving furniture and redecorating the place while everyone else was asleep. This behavior would repeat itself more and more frequently, along with it, the intake of pills. He managed to deliver the best interpretation of the Joker of all time. Insane, extravagant, terrifying, and charismatic. But unknowingly, this character was taking everything from Heath Ledger, even his own life. There is a myth about the Joker's curse. It is said that the actors who come to play him suffer tragedies. Of course, you can't blame a character for the problems each actor carries. This idea always circulates among fans, but it is pure superstition, or at least by repeating that, they want to convince themselves. An example of this would be the case of Jack Nicholson, who acknowledged that he had some problems after his performance. On the other hand, Jared Leto, for whom the character had a strong impact on his person, and finally Joaquin Phoenix, who almost collapsed when he was working on the Joker. As for Heath, he entered an obsessive state with the character, but it's also important to consider that he was going through a separation with his ex-partner, with his daughter Matilda in the middle, along with several lawyers who are not helping at all. He really wanted to give Michelle a good life, but something wasn't working between them. After Heath's death, in an Interview magazine interview, Michelle would affirm that he had trouble sleeping and said, "Ever since I knew him, he had insomnia problems. He had too much energy. His mind was working, always working." The little rest led him to get sick. He showed up at his job and they told him to go back, which he refused because he already knew what would happen. He wouldn't be able to sleep and would spend his time pacing the walls and taking the pills that were allowing him to stay upright. By this point he was filming the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, in which there is a scene where he remains under the rain. The little rest, coupled with stress and the apparent weakness he was carrying, caused Heath to fall into pneumonia. This respiratory complication led Michelle to decide that Matilda would not visit him under those conditions in London, so Heath stayed in his New York apartment to rest and resume filming of Dr. Parnassus in Canada. Heath Ledger's rest would last much longer than one night. On January 22, 2008, the young actor would have made an appointment with his masseuse around 3:30. She showed up at his house at 421 Broome Street in Soho, New York. She rang the bell, but no one answered. The actor had passed away. A week after Heath Ledger's death, the toxicology report would be ready. The autopsy revealed that the young man had died as a result of acute intoxication from the combined effects of diazepam and doxylamine. These drugs were the ones that provided a bit of rest in his so troubled mind, the blessed sleeping pills, and it was reported that the death had been accidental due to the fact of overuse of these psychotropic drugs. After his death, there were speculations that he had taken other drugs along with the sleeping pills. On the other hand, it was said that his friend Mary-Kate Olsen would have facilitated his access to the pills and in some way also to his death. But finally, by the beginning of August 2008, the prosecutor closed the case, thus closing his investigation and leaving Olsen free of all blame. In the same way that there were speculations with his death, there were also speculations when it came to distributing his inheritance. At first, it was said that it would be distributed between little Matilda and her mother Michelle. Perhaps it was how Heath would have wanted it, despite the divorce they were going through. Later on, a rumor appeared about a possible unrecognized son of the actor, who would have been 17 years old. Matilda would have had to share the inheritance with that young man if it was affirmed that he was his son, but later that theory was denied. It had simply been an invention of the Ledger family. Finally, Heath's direct relatives decided that the best thing would be to grant Matilda the fortune of $16.3 million. At the time of his death, Heath was filming The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. The actor's absence in much of the film was completed through special effects. In addition, the movie The Dark Knight was released shortly after his death, and the undisputed Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for his performance was received by his family. For now, the award is part of the Western Australian Museum, but it will return to his family, specifically his daughter, when she turns 18. The death of Heath Ledger took viewers and family members by surprise. After the news of his death, many people went to leave flowers at his doorstep. Several tributes were held in his memory, and his colleagues expressed deep sorrow for the loss of such a talented young man. Heath Ledger was a young Hollywood actor that no one will forget. In his short years on this earth, he left more than 15 films in which you can see him becoming each character he had to portray. An example of professionalism when stepping into the skin of the leading role, and an example in turn of how far the obsession for perfection, responsibility and love for what one loves to do can go. The thin line between the imaginary and the real blurred, and today, only memories remain. That wraps up today's video on Heath Ledger's death. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, please like the video below and subscribe with notifications on. Feel free to comment and suggest future video ideas. I've also included a couple of video suggestions to continue your marathon on this channel. That's all for now. I'm Magnus Mephisto and this was The Day That.